Welcome to Australia for the 2020 49er FX and Nacra 17 World Championships. We're being hosted by the Royal Geelong Yacht Club in Port Phillip Bay here in Victoria. 160 entries are sailing this week in the confined waters. 32 nations are represented, and of course this is the last World Championship before the ever-important Olympic Games later in Tokyo.
Hi everyone, and welcome to day 5 of the 49er FX and Nacra Worlds, brought to you by our clothing sponsor Ford Whip. We are on to the Gold Fleet racing at this stage, and today we'll be covering 3 races from the 49er fleet and 4 races for the 49er FX fleet. And Chris, you've been seeing a lot of 49er action in the boat park. We didn't get to cover it live yesterday, but we're going to be watching the girls out there today. What do you know? What are the scores? What's been happening?
Well, just because we didn't watch the FX on live yesterday didn't mean nothing was happening.
No.
Like it happens at this stage in the regatta's gotten a lot tighter, and we've seen some pretty big jumps. So any small mistakes, you'll see the women, fall out of favor, and then they're going to have a longer way to work back because there are fewer races. At the top of the fleet, we still have Charlotte Dobson and Saskia Tidy. We saw them. They got pulled out for measurement. We talked to them a little bit about that, but there's no stress. We talked to Saskia, and she's really focused. It's almost like nothing else matters in her world. And Tamara Chagoyan is still really strong on top with Paula Barcelo. And they're very consistent. And one thing we were just talking about, I was talking to Olivia about this, is that Tamara, she's a gold medalist. You're a silver medalist from that same Olympics, and she's really approachable on shore, but on the water, as you know, she's one of the strongest competitors that you'll have. So it's no surprise that they're really consistent there. In third place, Denmark had to drop a DSQ in race 7, so we want to find out what that is. But at this stage in the game, something else like that, and she's down to barely even making the medal race, and that's how tight it is. The people to look out for is Lloyd and Ryan from Australia. They had a really rough day yesterday, 10, 11, 8, and that's a really tough one, and they're still in 4th place, so look for them to really challenge the top 3. And in the rest of the fleet, Finland struggled in the past, but they're really strong right now and just outside of the top 10. And the USA teams, Stephanie Roble and Maggie Shea, they had a great day yesterday, but they're still only 4 points ahead of their compatriots for Olympic selection.
Oh, it sounds like it's going to be really exciting to watch how that all plays. Olivia, you were out on the water yesterday and you had some great insights about what was happening, especially with the conditions. And it's going to get hot here today. Tell us a little bit about what you saw yesterday and what's happening tomorrow.
Yesterday was a tricky day for everyone out on the water. The shifts were just out of control. We heard the race officer this morning chatting to the coaches in the coaches meeting about the range of shift that they had, and it was really tricky to set a course and a start line, so they did a great job doing that. Additionally, the crews did a great job getting around the course and really keeping their heads out of the boat, especially in that Nacra fleet where there was just everything going on anywhere with that abandoned race as well. So, a little bit of waiting around. I'm pretty sure that's what we're going to find today. The postponement flags were up this morning, so I think it is just a little bit of sit around and wait. There is a lot of wind at Melbourne Airport at Tullamarine, about 30 knots, so we're certainly not seeing that here this morning, but hopefully we do get a little bit of breeze in the next little while.
Thanks, Olivia. And Peter, we watched a lot of racing yesterday. What did you make of it all? We saw a few changes in the leaderboards and a lot of action. Are you expecting to see the same big moves on the leaderboards today?
I think, there's the obvious, and that's the World Championship here in Geelong, and people all want to win or get on the podium. But for me, it's the byplay that's going on, because there's a lot of Olympic selection regattas going on within the big regatta, and you see it with the Australians. They're fighting out the Kiwis in the Nacra class. It's all on there because they're fighting for the Worlds, but they're also fighting to get to Tokyo. And I expect that will carry on today. And look, I was really impressed in the light, fickle conditions, how good the Europeans were. Bilstein and Boten in the 49ers, they just revel in that stuff when it gets light and funky. I think the sailors from down under like a little bit more pressure than that, the Aussies and the Kiwis. Look, today is going to be one of those days, and it could be really, really tough on the sailors. But that's our game. That's the game we play. Can't wait.
Fantastic. Well, it definitely will be action-packed out there today. In the meantime, what you can do is subscribe. If you go to 49er.org/subscribe, you can subscribe to all the action, and that means you will not miss a minute of everything that is playing in all of these classes. So stay with us, and we'll be into the live racing very shortly. Play, we were so optimistic this morning, and we apologise for all of the delays. We do have an exciting update. I mean, it's not a whole lot, but the race committee has headed out there. We've seen, if you're tuning in from overseas, we've seen some crazy weather today. Thunderstorms, absolute glass outs, the sun's come out, it's got really hot, the clouds have come over, the apocalypse has come and gone, and it's been a bit of a waiting game for all of the teams. They've been sitting around, especially in that bar area, not drinking, but playing lots of cards and doing what sailors do, I guess, when they're in this situation. It's the game we play. You said it, Peter.
Well, it is, and being a Kiwi, I've got to acknowledge the flies. Just watching that clip, and we're all doing the Aussie wave,
yeah.
And it's certainly not waving at all your fans, but it's great. It was warm this morning. Thunderstorms came through, and that's problematic with the lightning and carbon fibre masts. So I think it's been prudent that the race management team have waited, but the signs are improving for late afternoon racing.
And that's great, because we do want to bring you guys all the action. We wanted to take a bit of time to talk about, what's been happening over the last few days and how everything in the fleets have evolved. So we're going to go, I think, break it down fleet by fleet and check in with all of the action that's been happening. So I think we have to start with the 49er, because we finished there last night. And, the biggest standout here is how close the racing's been. We're in the Gold Fleet now, so that's the top 25 boats that we were following around yesterday, and how tight it is. And we kind of had a look, and we think that, there's 27 points between the teams that are in the running to take that championships away. And that's Austria, New Zealand, Spain, Germany and Australia are all within fighting distance. You can see up there with our overall scoreboard. And so let's talk about this a bit, Peter. What do you think? Are we going to see Pete and Blair be knocked off their perch this regatta?
Well, certainly a lot of challenges having a crack, and I think for me now it's a bit like what it was at the last Worlds, where I thought Eric Heil had a crack, and he just didn't maybe have the mental fortitude or the belief that he could get the job done. And I think Benjamin Bilstein and David Hussell are in the same position. Did they miss an opportunity yesterday? I mean, they had really the Kiwis, I think, on the rack when New Zealand in the second race of the day really stubbed their toe and had a 15th, so that became their discard. But then the Austrians went into the next race and had a 20th. And if they could have just had a clean race, a non-drop performance, the New Zealanders would have been really on the rack. But they didn't get that done. And it's the story of our game, isn't it? Wish I have done that. But for one of the teams to knock the New Zealanders off, they're going to have the mental fortitude to believe that they can beat them, and maybe that will mean they've got to take a little bit of a risk.
Yeah, a little bit of risk. It's always going to be the way with that. Leading into those two last races, these guys were dropping a third, which is pretty outrageous considering the conditions that we've seen. But we see them now carrying a drop of a 20th and now a 12th, and it's really levelled up. There's only 1 point between those teams, but it's all for the taking.
Yeah, it is, and there's still other people in the game. I think the Spanish team, Botin, he's got a crack. Again, you'd need there's a 10-point differential there. It needs to actually have a couple of really strong races, and we might get that this afternoon. And even right down to the Australians, I think the Philippines Phillips brothers, depending what happens around them, I think they need other things to happen. They're in with a shot. So realistically, there's probably those 5 or 6 teams that that could win this World Championship.
Well, we were going to talk about the Phillips brothers because they've had some super close times where they nearly put this whole regatta together. And we know, Olivia, probably a little too well what Australia asked for that Olympic selection. So for these guys, they've got to get a top 6 result at a World Championships to guarantee themselves for Australia to send them as a team at the Olympics over especially the other teams, but particularly for Australia to choose to send. We've seen these guys come super close. This could be, this could be their moment. They've got a new coach. We've seen Malcolm Page, who is also a super familiar face and one of Australia's greatest dinghy sailors, come in and coach these guys. So we're really excited. What kind of form? What do you think about the Phillips brothers, Olivia?
Yeah, they've been sailing together for such a long period of time, on and off with some other 49er, crew members as well, but they're ones that have been around for a while, and so they do know the nature of racing and knowing to be consistent. So they've been struggling with their consistency. I was actually speaking to their parents earlier this morning, and this regatta seems like it's a consistent one for them. And especially, we've been speaking about the conditions, about how tough they've been. They've been able to put consistent results on the board for the entirety of the regatta, and they've really moved themselves into a top contender. So, currently sitting in 5th is a really, really solid effort for them, and I'm sure they're stoked to be there. But they're also really humble guys, so they'll just be kind of trying to chip away. They would have been sitting there chilled as a cucumber all throughout today, just wanting to go racing, basically.
I mean, that's what any sailor could, all we want to wish for, to get out there and have a crack. The Phillips brothers, they say that they'll humbly say that, they can sail in any condition, and they are, but we know them, I think, historically as badass, heavy air sailors. These guys can really let it rip. Peter, you were talking the same with the Kiwis, and we just heard around in the boat park that we were talking about the British team and how they have at one stage taken 4 sailors out with one boat and just gone out in the craziest conditions, stuff that's survival, and just let it rip, and rotating sailors in and out and getting it away. Is that what it's going to take? We know Southern Hemisphere sailors are quite strong in the heavy. Is that, the technique that it's going to take to get these guys super comfortable?
I think that's an inspired, piece of coaching, to be honest, to take a boat out, take the crews out and say, right, we're just going to hammer it and start to feel comfortable. You look at a sailing season, and I'm sure down under in Australia and in New Zealand, percentage of your season is sailed in moderate to fresh conditions. Whereas Europe, for my eye, it's in that light to moderate and occasionally fresh conditions. So to replicate, to optimise your performance in the fresher conditions, you've got to go out and do it. And so what I think GBR have done there, that was smart. That's good thinking. Look, from me, I think an inspired decision to bring Malcolm Page in as a coach. He's a winner. He's a gold medalist. And he brings a lot to the table, and I think that's reflected in this good result we're so far seeing from the Phillips brothers to get up, and if they can just carry this momentum through, tomorrow is going to be pretty fresh. And so we're going to see a bit of this tomorrow, but I think that's a very good decision by the Australians to appoint Malcolm Page as their coach.
And so the other thing that's been really interesting is how condensed the fleet's been around the course. You've got a few shots here of this start line. They're neck and neck straight off the start, and it's an absolute dogfight for these guys to keep their nose ahead. But looking at this mark rounding, we're rounding 4 wide, and we just thought there was a really fun bit here where the Brazilians, you can see them there, just sneak in. There's 5 points. Right there on the scoreboard, jibe, there's your money maker, and all of a sudden you're ahead of a few of these boats. And there are these unique opportunities when the fleet is so condensed like that for these guys to just make up 10 points like that on the leaderboard.
It's hard to do it on an upwind or a downwind leg, and to see it at one mark rounding, and you've got to have the confidence and the skill and the boat handling to do that. And I thought that was a really good illustration of, as we say, sticking it in there, and you get the benefit.
Yeah. You got to be brave, don't you, sometimes? Okay, let's talk about the US trials in the 49er class. We know that that's neck and neck. Olivia, do you want to break us walk us through that a little bit?
Yeah, well, the USA actually haven't qualified the country themselves yet to go to Tokyo in the 49er class. However, there is a really intense battle for them waiting for a country to give up their spot, basically. We know that the Brazilians have a tough policy where the top Brazilian team has to be inside the top 18 at the Worlds. And then we've also got the European and African continental qualifiers at the Genoa event later this year. So whether one of those countries doesn't accept, it could go to the American team. Now, which team that is all dependent on these World Championships. So the US trials are very rigid in the way that they do events, and it's about your placing in the entire fleet against your opposition, basically. So in last year's Worlds, we did see Nevin Snow and Wilson, his crew.
Yes,
Daniel Wilson, sorry. They did very well at the last Worlds, and so they've got a 5-point advantage over fellow Americans of Barrow and Kiss. Now, Snow is sitting in 18th at the moment and is ahead of Barrow, who is in 21st. So at the moment, it looks like Nevin would, if all things stayed the same, Nevin would get that Olympic spot for the USA, but then there's still the actual physical giving of a spot to USA. So, that's one that probably they didn't really see coming early last year. So if they do get the spot, basically it goes back to last year's pool of winners, and they were just one spot outside that.
I think what's heartening for the Americans, they got 4 crews in the Gold Fleet.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
And that's the first. So that we're seeing a change, and the US sailing has gone through a bit of a drought really at this level. We are seeing a subtle change here, and something's going on real well in their campaign. I see Dave Ullman walking around out here. They're starting to throw some smart brains at it, and 4 in the top 25.
Yeah.
Now, there's no one in the top 10 at the moment. We're looking at medal race, but Andrew Molleris, I'm sure, and Ian McDiarmid, they'll be looking for the remainder of the Gold Fleet racing to try and push up into that top 10.
So they were 19 points behind Snow and Wilson at the last World Championship. So they've got a lot of making up to do if they want to be that American at Tokyo for the 49er class. But as you said, all these American sailors are coming from college and from match racing and M32s, and they're coming into the 49er class with a range of skills. They're not just coming up through one simple pathway, and I think that's obviously what's working well for the American skiff and also Nacra class.
Bit of collaboration as well. In a big old country, it's quite hard to organise humans to be in the same place at the same time. And you've heard about the struggles with the Americans in the boat park with some of our dock walks that we've been doing. And, that's half the struggle as well, getting these guys to work together. But then there's that whole geographical barrier as well. Anyway, we'd like to take a quick moment to thank one of our sponsors, Ford Whip. They are the official clothing partner for the Nacra class, the 49er class and the 49er FX class. And we wouldn't be able to be bringing you this awesome live coverage of this event without them. So we'd just like to show you a little bit of a clip from those guys. Welcome back. Thank you again, Ford Whip. And it's been so cool, especially in the Nacra boat park, seeing their helmets and I call them the bulletproof vests, but they are life jackets, their protective equipment. And now that with the Nacra class, it's compulsory for these guys to wear the life jackets also, but the helmets full-time, no matter what condition. We're seeing more and more of their equipment pop up in our boat park, which is really quite cool to see them also supporting the event. So we thank them very much. So speaking of Nacra, let's talk about some of the Nacra action. Something that's been a bit of a theme of this regatta, and it's a bit unfortunate. It is the weed, and it is just one of those factors in yacht racing. Just like today with no wind, the sailors are often dealing with weed, but it has been I guess, had a tactical influence over the racing as we've seen it unfold. I was speaking to Nath a little bit earlier in the day, and a few of the things that we were calling yesterday, Peter, their reaction was, no, that was weed, And so we're seeing some pretty creative ways of the Nacra leaning up super high. Hopefully we can get a clip up of that soon. Those guys really leaning over, and that's hoping that the weed will drop off. But these guys, they've got winglets. Yeah, here we go. Here's the clip we were talking about, and they really lean it up. You can see Nathan shake the helm around a little bit, like, get off. And there's winglets at the bottom of those rudders, and, the foils obviously have quite an aggressive shape as well. But these guys are having to get super creative to problem solve getting the weed off. So we're seeing guys lean the boat over, but also like cavitations. We've heard of some reverse tacks, which... I've been dabbling in the Hobie 16 lately. I know a lot about, 3-point tacking, but we're seeing a little bit of that as well for these guys. But there was one critical moment that we watched during the racing yesterday with Tita and Banty, that team, and they were rounding the bottom mark. They'd done a tack onto what we found out was a very critical tack to be on. Everyone had to be on port tack. There was quite a large shift, and you can see on the screen here some of the frustration while these guys, try to sort it out. There's not quite enough wind for them to lean the boat right over. They don't want to tack, and they've kind of decided that. And you can just see some of the frustration. There they go, they get it up a little bit, but it's just been one of those ongoing battles and another layer of the tactics in this racing.
Yeah, it's a little bit unfortunate, actually, because from what I can gather, there's not always weed in the bay, but it just so happens with this weather pattern, and that's the fact of life. What's interesting is the techniques that get applied to get rid of weed on a boat with a foil, and Nathan pointing out to us, as he should, inducing cavitation. So inducing, cavitation around the foils, and that'll blow the weed off. And I think that's really creative. And you think back to olden times where we actually had knives implanted in the leading edges of foils. I'm not suggesting that would be what we'd do here, but the sailors are quite creative, and they come up with quite inventive ways of dealing with the weed. But let's just hope from now on in the regatta that the weed issue disappears.
The thunderstorms have blown it away. Fingers crossed.
Now we've got lightning and thunder. Oh well.
Yeah, and, we in the boat park, we were talking about how some teams, this is their first time dealing with conditions like this. And so having to kind of problem solve on the run has been a little bit of a theme where some teams have, come across this problem. But it's definitely been a bit of a theme, unfortunately, for this event. But again, that is yacht racing. So let's crack on with the Italians, because there's something that I really kind of wanted to unpack with regards to having two superpower sailors or teams coming head-to-head in this qualification. And we've done a bit of research with their results. Tita and Banty, they're 2018 world champions. They won the test event in 2019. And then you've got Bissaro and Frenscari. They came 5th in the Olympics, and they won the 2019 world championships. So that is one strong nation in this class. From what we understand, the Italian selection is quite subjective. I'll tell you what, I wouldn't want to be in those shoes. Do you guys have anything to say about how that's going to unfold?
Well, I think from, again, Australian, New Zealanders, and maybe even the Brits and the US, we come from a society where we encourage objective decisions. Whereas the Latins and the Italians and maybe the Spanish are more creative and free-flowing, and they can sing opera. And this is an opera, because right now you've got these two teams just smashing it out. And it looked earlier in the season, Tita and Banty had the wood. They were going to do the business, and they were looking good for a subjective, objective selection. But then along comes Bissaro, wins the Worlds in Auckland, and he sailed really well. He's ahead here. And I think it has created a selection dilemma, even if you have a subjective system. So, yeah, good luck.
So, yeah, Bizarro in 4th place and Tita in 17th at the moment. And, Tita's had some pretty strong races in during this regatta, but hasn't quite put it together. And we've seen a little bit of his frustration as it's been unfolding. But this is, I think, as you said, we'll call it an opera. I quite like that, an opera that we're just going to have to sit back and see what happens. But pretty impressive for both of these teams to be performing for so long.
I've got one for you guys, Olivia. Here you got a team you got Tita and Banty who were just nailing it earlier. They won the Worlds in 18, they won in Japan in 19, the test event, World Sailor ranking of 2.
Yeah.
But right now there's another team that are running hot. What do you do? What would you do with that dilemma?
Oh, look, I think the test event, winning the test event in the Olympic venue is something that has a little bit of weight to it. Obviously, we know that everywhere around the world has different sailing conditions, and especially in Tokyo, I think you need to give it a little bit of credit. It's a little bit tricky, and it's obviously got added pressure of being this Olympic hype event. But on the other hand, you've got people, as you said, that are really, really running hot, and they're consistently kind of been improving up there. Obviously, Tita and Banty are a little bit free-flowing and a little bit kind of more of a youth kind of aspect to them. And obviously, Tita coming from the 49er has made massive improvements moving into the Nacra fleet, being able to be at the forefront of it, having consistently top 10 results in pretty much every major event that he's been to. Bassaro and Frascari, look, I think it really is going to be super subjective, as we said, and one for the Italian selectors. They're known for making kind of eccentric decisions, so I guess we're just going to have to wait and see on that one. We don't even know when it's going to be announced, do we?
No.
But this one could just play out in the Olympics as well. I mean, this is a story to watch selection and then see how who's ever selected perform on that stage up in Tokyo and Hiroshima.
For Italy, it's kind of that lovely position to be in, that you'll be pretty confident in whichever team you do send, because they are at such a high level. It's not a terrible problem to have. So we were discussing a few, you kind of touched on it, Peter, the different variances in how nations are selecting their teams. And we've just spoken, obviously, about the Italian, but then also we've touched on the Australian and what we know as in New Zealand as well, that there's that benchmark. So you have to cross a line for the Australians being cracking into the top 6 at a World Championships. And then if 2 teams do make it in or no teams make it in, then it becomes a little bit more subjective. And then going on to, we've said with the USA that it's completely numbers based. So whoever has the best performance in those 2 regattas. What do you think? Pluses, minuses?
I think every system has pluses and minuses, and I know in New Zealand it has been talked about a lot, and I've set the New Zealand selectors or Yachting New Zealand have settled on the system very similar to what you have here in Australia. We in New Zealand came from a completely first past the post system, so it was like the US system, and that got biffed out, I think, before 2000. Look, it's tough. I can understand first past the post. I can understand where Australia and New Zealand are. I'm not so... the subjective thing, I think, is just so wide open for appeal and to going to arbitration. I guess I don't like that system so much.
Yeah. All right, let's get into the sailing then. We've got a pretty cool clip of some of the downwind sailing that's been going on, but we've been seeing a few different techniques that these sailors are running on the downwind, but also flat water. So it's really exposing. You can see there the lovely flat water and how these teams have kind of adapted to the conditions. And these guys are always updating. It's a relatively new class. We don't know how to sail it perfectly yet.
Yeah, it's interesting with the Nacra because the actual foil control, the course control is on the dagger board. It's got an L foil on it, and it is a course control. So the refinement has been that the crew, the forward hand, uses 4.5 body weight to alter the angle of the tack of the foil. And it's relatively flat here, so you're not seeing the big running up and down the side deck. But it's a skill, and it's athleticism, and it's a real feel for the boat. And I think it's an evolving skill still for the Nacra 17. And it just amazes me how quickly, though, the fleet have got onto it.
Yeah.
Look, if there's breeze around tomorrow when there's bigger waves, sit back and enjoy it.
It's going to be great watching.
Yeah.
And I remember also when I was sailing the Nacra how influencing the sail trim can be as well with that. And it's a real juggle between human sails and then overlaid with the conditions that these guys, it's a monster of a boat. It takes a full collaboration of sails and both athletes on board that boat and then their position on the boat as well. Quite a juggle. The other interesting thing that we've been seeing evolving over the last few regattas in this class is it's not nearly foiling upwind, but they're pretty damn close. It's like a hull skimming through the water. It's new and it's popping up on different occasions. And Olivia, you saw a lot of it out there yesterday.
Yeah, out on the water yesterday, there were a few teams that were able to get up on their foils, Nathan and Hayley Outeridge being one of them. And, they had a very consistent day yesterday. They really solidified their position at the top. And you saw it come out at positions that where they were able to extend on a long tack and they didn't have anyone to leeward of them. So they were able to just get the leeward hull just up out of the water, sometimes quite a fair way, up to 30 centimetres out of the water, which was pretty cool to watch. They obviously had to sail a lower mode, but I was actually close enough to hear the communication between Hayley and Nathan. And
cool.
It's really, really in-depth. They obviously know each other very well, brother-sister combination, but obviously a new one sailing together in this quad. But it was really interesting. I could pick up a couple of things. Obviously, not that close to hear the detail, but it was really cool to hear. It was really body weight dependent, so you can't have too much. You need enough riding moment to induce lift in the leeward foil, but you also need enough wind to hold it there. So it was a really fine balance, and you could see Nathan steering and Hayley using, her body weight quite a bit. So it was really interesting to see that against someone who probably sails a little bit of a higher mode in what we saw at a top mark. I think it was in the third race of the day when the wind was in. Yeah,
let's get that clip up. We've got a great bit of footage here
we go.
with Santi, and obviously sailing a super high mode. And, we kind of rode him off for that ley line, and then all of a sudden he found another gear here and sailed super high. The American team in the background, these guys started nearly 3 side by side, and then all of a sudden someone kicks into this 6th gear and the other sailors have to respond to that. And so these guys, they have this arsenal of tools that they can use, but they often don't get to use their special mode. They'll be dictated to by the other sailors.
Yeah, I think what's interesting there is where Nathan has come from. He's come out of the America's Cup with Artemis foiling cats.
Yeah.
So there's a technique thing going on. And then he's the GP series, he's in there. So he's actually, probably of all the sailors, he's got that knowledge of how you go from displacement, semi-displacement, foil assist to foiling and what the benefits are. Remember, it's always about VMG. How quickly am I getting to the top mark? And I have no doubt in the next 6 months you're going to see a quantum leap in terms of this foiling assist, foiling and displacement mode in the Nacra 17. By the time they get to Tokyo, it'll be a different look. I have no doubt there'll be a lot of sailors, a lot of crews refining that technique.
And that's, I think, what makes these classes so exciting. The Nacra sailors, they got a grasp of the old foiling system or semi-foiling systems, and then this quad, they're throwing a brand new boat. And it's like an arms race, isn't it, to figure out the equipment as quickly as possible, what the weight range is, how these boats operate, and again, then that development into the semi-foiling and foil assist upwind. It's just outrageous how quickly they're developing. And yeah, exactly as you said, we just do not know how these guys will be sailing by the Olympics, but yeah.
Well, I would think they won't. I don't think you'll see foiling right around the track. The boats themselves are not set up. They don't have the tools to do that. But at crucial moments, as Olivia pointed out, if it's a long board, a long port or a long starboard, and you can push forward enough and take a bit of go a bit deeper, but VMG closer to the top mark, or if there's a bit of a wind shift one way. It'll happen, I have no doubt.
And that's exactly what happened on that clip that we just saw. So you guys had written them off, the Argentinians off for the ley line. So obviously Nathan was a little bit further extended past the ley line. So perfect opportunity to put it into into practice and get foiling and really close down that gauge without having to lose too much at all. So, we're going to be seeing more of it for sure.
The results, they're super close in this class, and there's about, again, 5 boats all in that hot contention to make it into those medals. And it's just going to be a matter of time of how much racing these guys get in before we see that medal race. But it's going to be very exciting. So there you go. You've got the results up there on your screen. Nathan and Hayley Outeridge just leading out a little bit after a pretty strong, solid performance yesterday. Gimson and Burnett in second place on 48 points. Waterhouse and Darmenin, 56 points. And then it's so close. Pizarro and Franscari, 57. Wilkinson Dawson, 58. Equal tie with Delapierre and Ordonez. You can see it right up there on your screen, but it is super close. Anyone in that top 6 could still secure themselves a medal. So that is really exciting for us to watch unplay. Fingers crossed this afternoon, even better, and then again tomorrow morning. We're going to have a quick word from McGlide, and then I think we have a lovely little bit of McGlide, product to play with. So let's see what they've got for us. What have we got, Peter?
Well, yesterday I said, well, this sounds like a fantastic product, McGlide. So the guys have kindly brought us in a little bit of a demonstration of the product. So here it is, the black stuff on the board. And texture-wise, it sort of feels a little bit sticky. It's quite a thick film, isn't it? And what's interesting, and I don't know if you'll be able to see it on the camera, because I was thinking, well, you put this on as a film in sheets. What do you do with the joins? Now, they've cleverly come up with a glue that goes over the joins, because you'd think that would be a weak point, maybe. But it's interesting, isn't it? Yeah. And it feels like you can understand why growth doesn't stick onto it.
Yeah, I've actually looked into this before. My family has a yacht up in Sydney from where I'm from, and we actually looked into it the last time we anti-fouled. Now, obviously technology is just fantastic, and we weren't aware of this McGlide product. So next time we go anti-foul, I am for sure going to bring this up, and I'm sure Mum and Dad, you're watching. So let's have a look into this.
Well, and of course, I read the pamphlet, and it talked about fuel on powerboats. Big powerboats, 5 to clean bottom. 5 to 6% savings in fuel. I mean, that's massive. And even they're saying on a racing boat, of course, a clean bottom, you're always quicker.
Well, exactly. And it is so smooth, and it's silicone-based, as we've heard, so it's, it only makes sense.
Yeah, so if you're around, jump online, have a look. It's fascinating. I'm quite intrigued, actually.
And for me, the biggest thing is the environmental effect. And so there's just such a huge impact of anti-foul on the environment. So this seems like a really lovely, tidy solution. Okay, let's talk about the 49er FX. We haven't got to see them on the live footage just yet, but so much has been going down in this class. And we're really excited to give you everything, all the hustling we've done. We've been figuring out all the information. And so we know that these guys, this class has been really hotly contested. There's been 6 world champions since the class began in the Olympic cycles. 2 of those world champions are not currently sailing in the class, but they are both coaching, which is really cool. Jenna May Hansen coaching the Danish sailors, and Julia Conti is still here as a coach as well. So I think that's quite cool. Only one one team has won a World Championships twice. Back to back,
Yeah.
which is pretty impressive. But this class is so close, and I really do feel like this medal is for the taking.
Yes.
Both at this World Championships, but also at the Tokyo 2020 Olympic Games. Some of our top sailors are a little bit further down the leaderboard. We were talking about Beckering and Dutz. Those guys are currently in 9th place, but they are our back-to-back reigning world champions. We've seen, well, Olivia, you were mentioning that these teams are on the rise.
Yeah, so throughout the qualifying stages, there were a couple of teams that we've looked at that possibly weren't performing as well as they would like to. However, as soon as they've got into the Gold Fleet, they've been able to get off the start line really cleanly and be able to get consistent top results. So Annemiek and Annette from the Netherlands, they're the ones that have made really big improvements from being outside the top 10 to now making more and more moves, and hopefully we'll see them hopefully soon. But, at the moment we're still postponed here in Geelong. And then also we've got the reigning gold medalists, so Martine and Kahina from Brazil. They were ones that we haven't seen at the top of the leaderboard throughout the qualifying stages, but getting into Gold Fleet racing, they've just been able to execute, and now they're sitting up in 8th. So we've been seeing a little bit of a trend of qualifying stages, maybe some other people getting a couple of jump starts on them, but as soon as they get into Gold Fleet, they're really performing, and that's what winners do. They perform when it gets to Gold Fleet. You've got to get off the start line cleanly. Everyone is, all the top 25 are in the one fleet, and there's really nowhere to kind of escape from. You need to be on the front foot.
There is a real shift in that racing, going from the blue and yellow fleet into that gold fleet. You were in the FX, Olivia. Did you feel the difference in going from one fleet to another?
Yeah, there was a difference in the racing for sure. Obviously there's added pressure going towards the back end of a regatta, but definitely in the qualifying stages, you could get out of jail a little bit. If you didn't have a good start, you could kind of pick the right side, work your way through the fleet a little bit if you had that easy speed, and that's what every skiff sailor would love, is just speed that comes and you don't have to think about it. So they do a lot of training in just having that easy speed just to make sure they get around the course quite easily, and then can use more brain power to think outside of their boat. So looking at the environment, you're able to get a little bit more out of that. But however, when you get to Gold Fleet, the start lines are so much more intense. As we've seen in that 49er clip earlier before, everyone is fighting for every inch, every position. So Gold Fleet does step it up a little bit. You do always have to be performing, and you do always want to be striving to do your best, but there's a little switch that kind of goes, and the rest of the fleet just takes a jump with you.
Another thing that's been a little bit disappointing, we're speaking of some of our top performers, is our New Zealand team that are out, unfortunately, with Alex Maloney getting an injury just before the competition. And what was really lovely and heartening was the feeling in the boat park. Like these, we missed them, and their competitors missed them. And it really shows the camaraderie in this class. These girls, it's pretty fierce on the racetrack, but once everyone gets to shore, there's a deep respect and a mutual respect amongst all of the sailors, and it was something that was really noticeable when some of our really great racers, the New Zealand team, had to retire, unfortunately.
Yeah, another injury in the FX fleet, which is a pretty big call, was Susan Buick of Tina Sunny Sailing. So they've got Lotta to come in and sail, and they've done so well. Where are they sitting? They're just in 14th. They had a cracker of a first day with a 1-2-2. So it's really great to see that the whole entire fleet kind of supports each other, Lotta being a previous FX campaigner as well herself.
I was asking Lotta if this has, stoked the fire, if we're going to see a huge comeback, and she shook her head, but, was really enjoying this little ride back into Olympic racing.
As you would.
All right, let's carry on with this injury form, because who it's great to see back is Tamara Eshagoyen and Paula Barcelo. these guys suffered an injury during or just before the Auckland Worlds, had a go, and then ended up having to retire due to a foot injury from the crew Paula. And a real shame, but what is cool to see is that these girls have got it back together. They're sitting in second place. It's really cool to see Tamara back into it.
Yeah, well, she's a class act, and she's a gold medalist, as you guys very well know. I had to say that. Sorry about that. Of course, she was a gold medalist in 2012, and these two were silver medalists.
Silver medalists, yeah.
And I remember the race well, but I won't go there. I won't tease. I've already teased you. And you got your little water wings on.
No, it's all right. I got splashed. I got called Splash for about 2 years after that, so I've worked through it.
But it's great to see the Spanish team back, because it was disappointing and it was gutting for them in Auckland, because they went into that 2019 regatta as one of the favourites. The other one that stands out to me is Charlotte Dobson and Saskia Tidy. They were seventh in Auckland, and really they weren't sparkling. I see they've got Stevie Morrison here as a coach, yeah. And I rate him very highly, and they're at the front of the leaderboard. Do you think that's coincidental? I think he brings something to their combination, and they are a team to watch out for. They've been already selected for the Olympics,
yeah,
and they're currently winning this one. They've put a warning shot, haven't they, through the fleet? Hey, we're here to play, and they look fast.
And Olivia, you had a great chat with them during the week about that early selection and how much of a relief that can be for our sailors.
Yeah, so obviously Saskia and Charlotte got selected for the Olympics straight after the test event in Tokyo last year. So they had quite an early selection, and I was speaking to Saskia about it, and she felt a big sense of relief, but also a sense of exhaustion. Saskia felt like she'd already gone through an Olympic kind of cycle in that period of time, and they ended up taking quite a big break out of that test event and out of that selection process, because it was a grueling process for them, and they're obviously relieved and glad they've got the spot, but they needed that break, and I think going straight back into those worlds was, probably like a stepping stone for them. And then they're coming out firing at this regatta. Some amazing results, really consistent. Their worst is an 11th, so the rest are all top three.
The other standout performance, I think, is the Aussie combination. Yeah. They're in there, and Tess Lloyd and Jamie Wright, 35th at the last Worlds in Auckland, and there was a question mark when in Auckland about whether Australia would even look at filling the spot, taking them to the Olympics. This has to be a pretty strong indicator. I shouldn't get ahead of myself. We're not there yet. But you two must be delighted with this. You talked about if you get top 6. Is that my understanding? It's automatic. Mm-hmm. So fingers crossed for them. I hope they can hang in there.
And Jamie Ryan, she's come from the 470 class, and she's also sister of Will Ryan, who's one of our really strong 470 sailors, which is these guys are a relatively new combination.
Yes.
And so there is always that hit, that these guys take when they're kind of learning each other and improving through the ranks. It's so good to see them stand out, and I really have my fingers crossed for the Aussies. It's been a bit of a shake-up for these guys. We're seeing Tessa Parkinson and Ella Clark. Tess has been coaching these girls for the first few years of this Olympic cycle, and then has taken a step back and then rejoined as an athlete. I think the Australians, there's been a little bit of a loss of direction with the FX, and I guess at least things are being shaken up. Combinations, we're trying different coaches, and we're really we've been waiting for this standout performance, and I hope that Tess can bring it home.
And, at the last Worlds, there were no Australians in the gold fleet in the 49er FX class, and there's 4 there now. So obviously, a summer at home, getting a little bit more consistency into their sailing and their training, and it's obviously paying dividends.
And quite cool to see the young girls in there too, Natasha Bryan and Annie Wilmot. These girls are so young. I actually taught Natasha how to sail, and then all of a sudden she showed up in the FX squad when I was still an athlete. And I just love seeing that next generation pop in and be super fierce. And we're seeing that across all the nations, across all the classes. We're having a lovely little shift where some of these younger guys are really shaking things up, and I think that's really cool.
Great. I was talking to Anna's dad, and I think she's only 15. Is that right? Am I right in saying that?
Annie?
Yes.
No, so...
Am I wrong?
No,
Okay.
yeah, so Annie's just finished out of school, but Natasha
Yeah.
has only just finished school.
Okay.
She'd be fresh 18.
So they're really young.
Yeah. Yeah,
Hopefully,
they were still,
or that, or I'm really
No,
old.
fantastic.
they were
and
still sailing youth events throughout the 49er FX campaign.
fantastic.
Yeah.
And right now you've got, two Australian crews knocking on the door to get into the medal race tomorrow.
Yeah.
So that's a big step up from no one even being in the Gold Fleet in Auckland.
From 2 months ago. Yeah, exactly.
Great.
A
Yeah.
huge step. All right, we're cracking on with a bit of selection chat because one thing that I saw that was very interesting was a protest between two Danish teams last night. This is a country that has been working together so hard, going into the last Olympics, such good collaboration between the three teams with Jenna May, and a really happy ending with those guys winning a medal at the Olympics. But now we've got Nielsen and Olsen and Schutt and Nielsby. And these guys are, right up there in terms of performance, and there's always one of them performing really strongly. But tell me a little bit about what you heard about this protest, Olivia.
So I was talking to Coach Jenna, and obviously they've always had that collaborative thing that you've been talking about. But last night, did we see it break down a little bit? Because we had Ida and Marie, so Nielsen Olsen, protest AJ and Eben. So AJ and Eben got disqualified from the first race of the day yesterday. So their drop is a disqualification. They still sit in third place. So in 2019 Worlds, it was actually Ida and Marie that were in third place, and AJ and Eben in 11th. So the tables have turned a little bit at this Worlds, and Ida and Marie have sailed together for, the last two cycles. But then you also saw Anjuli in the last Olympic selection get her best Worlds result, but then also lose Olympic selection herself. So, the way that the Danish work together, and we've seen that throughout the fleet, through the dock walks, through the day talking to the Nacras, and the collaborative effort that they've always got going on. We're seeing a little bit of tension across all nations, I guess, but especially in this FX trial of the Danish team, because Ida and Marie are in 19th at this current point in time for these World Championships, and AJ and Eben are sitting in third. So there's quite a lot of points in between them, and anything can still happen tomorrow or this afternoon, even with racing potentially on the cards, and then a medal race to come down to it if Ida and Marie can get their butts into action.
Right.
Well, and there's a bit going on. Good luck.
Jenna May manages it, in her stride at the moment.
Yeah.
She's. It's so cool to see females coaching, first of all, but also athletes transitioning, out of the class with a really successful campaign, and then using those skill sets to help the other sailors. She's in that unique position where she's raced against them and coached them now. She knows these girls really well. So I'm sure if there's someone equipped to handle that situation, she is the perfect girl for the job.
Yeah, it's definitely, one of the strengths that we've seen in these Danish girls, getting everyone up to speed very, very quickly.
That collaboration has always been a real strength for those nations. Okay, so we are lucky enough to be at the Royal Geelong Yacht Club, and, this place has been so good to us. There's great docking facilities. It's pouring outside, and all the sailors can be undercover. We're all under control over here in some pretty crazy conditions. But we're really grateful to have Geelong host us for this event. And we've been enjoying the waterways, even though it's thrown a few challenges at the sailors. So we'll just see a little clip from those guys now. Thank you again to Geelong, and we've had a lot of fun here. And I mean, you've told us a few stories of what what you're getting up to in the evening, seeing all the things that Geelong's had to offer.
Well, last night, no.
We've been to some beautiful restaurants here in Geelong, and where we park the car, we have a nice little 10-minute walk back down to the yacht club, and it is beautiful. We're seeing families out having picnics. Beautiful afternoon yesterday.
Thank you, Geelong. Okay, so my understanding is Chris is out in the boat park and we are going to get an update from him. So Chris, can you hear me?
Lily. We're live now? Awesome. Hey, welcome back to the beach. We've been hanging out with the French team. We hung out under their awesome tent to wait out this last rainstorm. And right now, ever since we've been down here, Reuven, our cameraman, we've just been watching the breeze just slowly lay down. And that glassy surface that you see behind me has gone further and further and further out, meaning it's been growing. So this is kind of what they predicted today with pressure, just swirling around with these cells of low pressure and rain running by us. And that last one really just sucked the breeze right out of it. I was talking to one of the French team coaches, and he looked at a couple of the clouds that are still above us right now, and he said the air is going up, not down and across the water. So that's not a really good sign. But what we'd like to do is we'd like to talk to some of the French FX sailors who we met down here. They had an amazing day yesterday. They went from 15th place to 6th place. So they were probably, if you had to think who had the best day, it was probably the team from France. I think we have Lily Sebesi and Albin Dubois. So we're going to go talk to them right now. They're just checking out the water, and we'll see what they're saying. Hey, Lily, how you doing?
Fine, thanks.
And this is Albin?
Yes.
Great to meet you both. Who have you? Hello. Who you? What? Bill, what's it like out there? It's quiet. Well, now that we have a little bit of time to talk, let's talk about your day yesterday. 15th place to 6th place. So what were your places?
Yeah, it was a quite consistent day. We managed to have a really good start, and to climb for 15 to 6 overall.
What were the places?
6, 4, and 9.
Awesome. And so that just shows how strong and deep the fleet is, because those are really good scores, but it's not like a 1-2-1, and that still brought you up a whole bunch of places. And what's your goal for this regatta? What was your goal for this regatta? You're in the Gold Fleet.
Just to go step by step. For the moment we are 6th. We just want to stay on the top 10 to do the medal race tomorrow. And then we will see tomorrow if we are still on the top 10, what would be the next step.
Awesome. And we talked just briefly about qualification. And Lily, if you don't mind translating, is that okay? Yep. So what we wanted to know is you're in a qualification or for your national spot. Yeah. And so where are you right now, and what's the criteria?
Quels sont les critères de sélection et où on en est maintenant?
The French is not selected for the moment. We don't know if the federation select the team here or other event. I don't know.
Great. So what are the next events then?
The next event will be Palma, but as Alban said, for the moment France isn't qualified after Auckland Worlds, so we are waiting for this decision. Maybe thanks to the Oceanian continental spot, we will get the country qualified. So we just wait and we will see.
Awesome. And just the last question is, that was a really big jump yesterday. You've proven that you can do it and to hang with the best sailors in the fleet, which you've probably done a couple times before. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here. What do you think it was yesterday that allowed you to be so consistent?
We wanted to be really focused on the start, and we managed to have three really good starts. So that's the reason we had a good day yesterday. So tomorrow, if we will not race today, tomorrow the focus will be on the start also.
Great. Well, thank you so much. Good luck to both of you. Keep climbing the ranks.
Thanks.
Cheers. All right. Well, that's about it from the beach. It's starting to rain. I think Reuven wants his camera to be dry. So back to the studio.
Thank you for that update, Chris. It looks a little bit wet out there and very light wind, so we're just going to have to crack on in here. We do have another great cause that we are supporting, and it's a great way for the sailors event and class to give back to their host country for this regatta. So Australia has been absolutely devastated by bushfires this year, and it's something that's probably quite close to both of our hearts. You just suffered the smoke from it a few weeks later, but this country has really been through quite a hit, especially in the regional areas. So we've organised this great Australian bushfire appeal. You can buy, or it's donation, but that donation does give you a raffle, and we've got some great prizes up for grabs, which is really quite cool. So for you guys, if you do want to donate, you can go to 49er.org/donate, and the links are there, but it's also all over our Nacra and 49er Facebook pages. So make sure you get behind this great cause. Australia, we've tried to be really good to you guys as a host country for this event, and we'd love any help that you can in return, especially, our farmers and our wildlife, and a lot of our regional areas have been absolutely devastated. So if you can help in any way. But the plus side of this great cause is that we have some prize winners, and especially relevant after that last interview, Lili Sebezi, who just spoke with us before with our interview with Chris. You have won yourself a lovely jacket, which is really exciting. So thank you for the interview, and thank you for donating. We also have another winner, Liv Mackay. You have won yourself a duffel bag as well. So they are our winners for today. And yeah, I can't stress enough how much of a good cause this is. So if you have a few dollars that you can spare, this country will greatly thank you for that. That's going to be it for us for now. I think we've, had a fair bit to say about the racing. We still remain hopeful that something will happen, but we are just waiting. We've got the race committee out there waiting to see if any wind will blow in after the more recent thunderstorm and rain that's been through. So cross your fingers with us. But in the meantime, we will give you a good Nacra replay from yesterday. Thanks for joining us. There on your shot, the American team. Those guys, you can see, I love getting on board with these sailors. You can see how much they're doing with their sails. Holding this boat head to wind is a real balance between the jib. You'll see the crew easing it and just pulling it on to get a little bit of flow over those foils. These boats sit a little bit nicer than the 49er and the 49er FX in the sense that you can sit that hull in and you've got a little bit of control over the boat. But look at some of the steering that goes on with the helmsman. They're really pumping that helm to hold the boat into position.
Well, without flow, of course, it's very hard to manoeuvre. So this will be race number 9, a resale of the abandoned race. We're coming up to 8 seconds to go. All the boats are at the windward end of the line. And as we count down, there's a port hander starting. This is race 9.
And we are away. Strong manoeuvre from the Norwegians. Are they going to get across? Yes, they will. A nice little bit of angle for those guys. It does take a lot of guts to get across that fleet. Will they get across the pack?
I don't know if they'll get across the pack, but if you do clear the pack, it's certainly something to tell your mates in the bar afterwards.
Their next contenders will be that New Zealand team that are just, you can see their bows on the edge of the screen. I think that they will be through. It's always hard with this camera angle, but it will be a big duck if they have to start ducking the whole fleet, and there it is, bow down. They'll be looking for a gap, but there just is none. These boats are stacked up on that boat end side.
Yes. Give way boat, port hand start, and if you can't really clear the fleet, you are then in the game of the big dipping competition as they dip all the way across. Great start by Outeridge. Plier from France second is Santiago Langer, and Parenza in third, but it's early time with the data. But you've got to know the people that are on that board have got a good start.
And what we're seeing here is a lot of boats falling onto port tack, so that's really going to show that perhaps it's a little bit more than just that bias that's giving those boats the advantage. We've got at least 60% of the fleet now onto port tack, so on the opposite tack to the boats that are on the centre of your screen right now. Those guys are heading out to that right-hand side, and there is one boat that is absolutely launched, and it is Outeridge and Outeridge leading their pack out to that right-hand side.
I think they won the committee boat end, and they were first attack. Now, Nathan Outeridge will just capitalise on this. They can pull their bow down, they can get in that foil assist mode. The wind now is just touching, trying to get up to 9 knots. It's actually at 8.5 knots. But it is the Outeridge siblings of Nathan and Hayley, who have got first advantage off the line.
And about 3 or 4 boat lengths away from that next line of boats that you can see on your screen, with Santiago Lange and Carranza. Newberry and Lindenberg are in there as well as the Italians Tita and Banti, Italy 26. Yeah. It's a juggle. You know, we talked about the risk at the pin end. There's also that risk at the boat end. You know, those guys have got to make sure there's space for them to fit all 2 of the hulls in before the boat, and then pulling off that first tack and being clear. It's a real skill, and he's done it particularly well today, showing a little bit of his experience there.
So it's Outeridge, Pizarro, Santiago Lange and Carranza. They were there. Titi and Banti.
And Gibson and Burnett, you know, they didn't have the winning start off the boat end, but they are a few boat lengths to leeward, and they're flexing their speed right now as well. We know that those guys are fast when, you know, given the space and opportunity. And so they've got their bow down. They're really trying to close the gap on the boats around them. But that you do get a little bit of advantage being that leeward boat. You can control your mode a little bit more. You can sail perhaps a little bit lower. We're talking about that foil assist, at least getting some of those hulls skimming and out of the water, and you've got your best chance.
Well, it just reduces the wetted surface, and once you can build the speed up, and upwind, they very rarely the boats are really still not configured to foil upwind, but certainly they will get a bit of assistance from the foils to pop the boat up out of the water.
And so we're seeing like quite a strong angle from those guys that are on starboard tack. So I think that's why they're leading out into that right-hand side, so that they can get that lovely tack in and capitalise on that good angle. And we're just seeing Outeridge pop that tack in now as we are on board with Gibbs and Weiss. And you can see double trapping. It would be nice for these guys to stretch the legs after a few more light races that we've seen today. And a few of those guys out on the right-hand side have put that tack in and they're sending it over to the top mark. We're still just in the bottom third right now, so it's interesting to see how early that they're those lead boats in the right-hand side are putting that tack in. You've got a good perspective of it there on your tracker. That, you know, they're just doing the right thing there. I think you're just reducing risk by checking in with the rest of the fleet, and then you've got that next best choice when they condense together.
Well, a team that are really dominating this one and is Outeridge, Nathan and Hayley. Beautiful start, and now they're coming back on port and corralling that bunch around them back into the centre of the course.
Great shot of them right there on your screen, and that is that's the Greeks just to leeward of them.
I think the group that we're talking about far right this is the left-hand group that we're looking at, as the Greek team, and to windward of them there's, I think, one of the Australians. I can't quite pick out those numbers, but you can all see it on the water now. Over on the right, there's more pressure. The water's the colour is darker, and I get the impression that the boats in the middle there that we're looking at, their bows are actually pointing more to the right as well. So it will be pressure and shift as the sea breeze builds. We're seeing now it's touching on 9.5 knots. And I would expect by the end of this one, we might even be seeing 12 and 13 knots as the afternoon. But we pull back, and you can see Outeridge, well bow forward, very controlling, centre of the track. Immediately behind them, we've got Tita and Banti, then Gibson and Barnett. Santiago Lange is stacked in there.
And one boat that has taken a little bit more of a bite of that right-hand side, their sail isn't actually, you can't see them quite on your screen, but it is Delapierre and Ordonez and Jones and Porebsky. These guys are just a little ladder rung above them on the right. So they're bow back, but they've taken a bit more of a bite of that right-hand side. So it'll be interesting to see how that one plays out.
Well, if the wind is freshening and angling from the right, if they're stacked up to windward of the race leaders, that could be very nice as they get up towards the top mark. Bit of a drag race at the moment. It's not a lot of mid-course tacking going on, and it was the initial advantage. Beautiful start by Nathan Outeridge.
And these guys are going to be on starboard tack now for quite some time. And when these tacks do, if the course gets skewed, one tack might get, you're spending a lot more time on it.
I think it's long starboard, eh?
It becomes super crucial for these guys to have a clear lane and hold it. And that's when it turns into a little bit of that drag race for these guys to be able to hold that lane and keep as much speed as possible.
Good pressure, and it's building as we see. We can see the boats coming back now on port from the left-hand side. They are quite a long way behind the boats that tacked early and went over. So it's all about right-hand side. It's pressure and shift as we head up to the first mark.
Yeah, and you can see that dark patch right at the top of your screen. It's really showing us. It's great to see on the drone footage. You can see the actual pressure there. It's a game changer getting these drones up there. You get such a great view of the racing, and you can see there on your screen
you can see,
the Australian team of Outeridge and Outeridge just sending it.
And there's more. The closer you get to that headland over there, it just looks darker and darker. I think the right-hand group will just get richer and richer, and very quickly they are up in the zone and getting set up for the top mark rounding.
Yeah, Argentina number 1, Langer and Carranza, these guys are putting a little bit of pressure. There you can see Nathan's kind of responding to that pressure there. There's flying out on that right-hand side. They've taken a little bit of a dig out there, and that's definitely applied the pressure. You can see Nathan there reducing the risk there, taking a dig up. It'll be interesting to see how these two boats meet when they come together, because that right-hand side, they are flying in that pressure.
Certainly enjoying a good little zone, good little push forward at the moment. Down to leeward, we've got the other Australian boat. I assume that'll be Waterhouse.
Yeah.
So the Australians have been locked together like on a bungee, but at the moment it is the Outeridge combination.
And there's that cross, Argentina just getting across. So that right-hand side is playing dividends for those guys that took the dig out. And now the pressure is on Argentina. Are they going to take another step up? My guess is that they're a little bit short of lay, so they may have 2 more tacks left in them to get themselves up to that angle of the top mark.
So that should actually swing the pendulum back in favour of the Australian combination. Although Langer was ahead, he's got 2 tacks to do if he's not on ley line. Will he roll the dice and push it really hard on ley line? It's a high risk manoeuvre to come in on port and tack on the marker and get tack complete. So we could be in for a bit of an interesting top mark rounding.
You can see them having a bit of a conversation. Such a good, yeah, there it is. There's that tack. So these guys will be doing, it's a really short step up to that ley line, and the pressure is on for these guys. They're on port tack now. They have to keep clear of those starboard hand boats as we come into our top mark.
He's picked it beautifully. Langer's done the business here. He was ahead at that cross with Outeridge, and he's held on and he's extended his lead. So he's taken a bit of a risk, but also had the benefit and taken a gain. So at Mark 1, it is Santiago Langer and Carranza in the lead.
And a big gust the Australians got. They leaned right over. I think it's the Italians just to windward of them managed that gust just a little bit better. They put the heat on, but it will be Australia 4, 5, 6. Just in behind in second place. A great upwind for those guys, really solidifying that great start.
Jibe set by the race leader Langer at their mark, and Outeridge carries on port.
Yeah, so we've got 3 boats now that have made that jibe. 4, 5.
But that's how strong. So what this is telling us is when we look down and we're now looking to the left, there's just more pressure, more angle.
It's getting windy quite quickly. These guys have to be so switched on to transition from that super light stuff to what is fire. You can see how hard the crew's working. Get that kite up, get it strapped in. You've got all your jobs then, and that's even before you get out on trapeze. It's quite a juggle. These guys are so athletic.
On that reach of the offset, you saw Nathan and Haley, at least as far as we've seen, they were the only ones to jump up onto the foils. And it just showed you how hard they're pushing. We saw when Santiago Langer was going upwind, that head-on shot, his bow was down into the water. And when we had that side-on shot of Nathan and Haley, they were just getting into skimming mode. You saw his leeward bow lifting up. He was flatter than everyone else. And he was just pushing the foiling going upwind. And that's something he sets up even before the start. So he's pushing really hard. They were the only ones on the offset to get up on the foils. They just want to get going.
So you can see in your shot there, the Australians, Outeridge and Outeridge, are 1 ladder rung down. They're the boat that's furthest on the right of your screen there. They did the jibe late, It's going to be interesting to see how favoured this right-hand side is, that these boats are screaming down
But
on.
I get the impression the boats that jibed earlier are in more pressure and angle. And we can see there a big wheelie by the third, but that might be Tita and Banty, maybe?
Hard to see.
I can't quite see. No, it's not. It might have been them. I think that might have been the Italian flag. But it's all a bit of a one-way track down as we head down towards the bottom. Where's Outer? Oh, he looks quite strong down to leeward. It'll come down to the next manoeuvre, the jibe, and of course the boats coming back from the left will have starboard advantage.
It's the opposite downwind. When you're sailing in foiling mode, if you heel any more than just a couple degrees, you can really get the boat out of control, and it's a long way back from that. You really have to keep the boat really flat, and it's a really kind of narrow angle of how to deal with it downwind. You're not supposed to heel and lift the weather hull like you do upwind. It needs to be flat.
Well, the old foils, especially if they're an L foil on these boats, they do not like angle of attack being skewed. Otherwise, it all ends in tears.
Beautiful jibe there by Tita and Banty, and then Carranza and Langer there following suit with that jibe. Just that little ladder rung down and forwards, but Tita and Banty are really putting the pressure on the Argentinians now onto this downwind.
Yeah, Tita and Banty, I think, did a slightly better job there of that manoeuvre. They're not bow forward enough yet to be affecting the flow over Santiago Langer. Next one to come into play will be where are Outeridge, as they're ahead of Outeridge, so it's very close between the US and the Australians, and John Gimson is in that mix.
There is pressure being applied from all directions.
She's tight at the front. The wind's up to 10 knots now, so it is slowly increasing. We're on leg 2, race 9 of the finals.
It's great to see a good battle, of about 7 boats all fighting it out for that first place. Often, the lead boat gets to leg out a little bit and relax, but there is no relaxing for any of these boats out here. They are fighting tooth and nail for every metre. The main contenders for this first place is definitely Outeridge and Outeridge, Tita and Banty and Langer and Carranza coming into this bottom gate. But Tita and Banty, they are slick downwind.
They're fast. They now, from the animation, would be in a position to affect the trailing boat.
Now watch really carefully the cruise. The breeze and the sea state must be really steady, because earlier in the day you saw the cruise go way far forward and then run way far back. The crews are in a very steady position. They're not moving very much, just a couple feet either way, but they're staying really steady right now. So that means the breeze must be steady, and the windier it is, the more stable they can sail.
Yeah, and the seaway's relatively flat, so there's not the need to do those big fore and aft adjustments. As that's Tita and Banty jibe. They must be.
Let's see what they're doing downwind.
Here we go. That's the Argentinians to windward, but behind. So that's a lead change. As we come into Mark 2, it'll be Tita and Banty ahead of Langer and Carranza, and Nathan Outeridge and Haley Outeridge are going to be right in the mix, as are the Americans and the Brits.
Yeah, Newberry and Lamberg, they've really put themselves into a great position on this downwind. And also Gimson and Burnett, they've really inserted themselves into this pack that's racing for that first place. It looks like Tita and Banty will get into that bottom mark from that angle there. And so it's going to be interesting to see which side these guys pick at this bottom gate, and if there'll be any splits as well. If these guys, I think they're going to be favouring that right-hand side.
I'm sure they'll take the right gate if they're on ley line and head out again over towards that far side. Boats are already around the marker, the leaders.
Okay, so we've just had a bit of a time jump here, so we've all caught up. I think we were a little bit delayed on our online screen. So we're going upwind with these guys now.
I'm curious to see where the other Italian boat is, Vittorio. And they were right, Tita and Banty were right behind them in the previous race, and now they're launched in the lead, or at least
the race leader went really quiet there. Have they got an issue? I think they've got an issue. I think they might have an issue on board the race leader. We can see it's probably weed. I wouldn't mind betting they've picked up.
Yeah, they're going quite slow.
They're going really slow. Was it seaweed or foul on the foils, or have they just fallen into a light spot. But for sure, they were leading this one, and they're not now.
It's been a big hit. You could see them both sitting up, talking to each other. It looks like a bit of a lull as well. Perhaps they've got a lot of dirty air from these spinnakers coming down, but they just don't look quite comfortable.
Yeah,
they're not really legging out.
They definitely stopped, and they were working on something, looking down in the boat, pulling some lines. If they were really concerned about weed, you would have seen them almost stop or throw an attack and back down, because that's the technique.
It almost looked like something else had come unzipped for them.
Right.
So that is a big moment in this one. So Tita and Banty led at the bottom mark gate, but looks like they've had a mechanical issue on the second upwind, so we're on leg 3. And that's throwing the advantage right back to the Australian combination of Nathan Outridge.
Yeah, it's unfortunate we didn't get to see them go around that bottom mark, but it does look like they've had a little bit of a step up on the rest of the fleet, and they've definitely got right back into position. The Outridge and Outridge, they're super strong on the upwinds. They have to defend on the downwinds, but they're really putting themselves in a prime position on the upwinds, quite tactical, always in the correct side of the pressure and aggressive off the start line.
Yeah, the Americans, Sarah Newberry and David Liebenberg, they've really had a good day. They're really starting to progress quite nicely. Even a year ago, they would have moments where they'd have a top 5 race, and then they go back into the 20s. But, they're having a really great day today, so maybe this is their time to shine.
Well, they're up there in second, and they certainly engineered that bottom mark gate approach and exit very well. And they have also benefited, as have boats 1 to 4, on the mistake or the error or the mechanical issue that the Italian of Tita and Banty had. I'm sure that'll be a talking point. Someone will ask the question.
Yeah, they did. They slowed right down to 7 or 6 knots when everyone was doing 11 down to leeward. I did a bit of rewinding, and that it just goes to show you've got to be on speed all the time in this game, because these guys are flying.
So we're on leg 3, race 9, finals here in Geelong for the Nacra 17s. This was the race leader earlier on, but unfortunately they have had an issue, and that played for the benefit of Nathan and Hayley Outridge.
And this second beat is brought to you by McGlide, our boat wraps. Never anti-foul your boat again. Sign up for more information at 49er.org/wrap to get in touch with those guys for any of your anti-fouling, non-anti-fouling needs.
The one thing I've seen through this fleet as we're on this long port tack is I've spoken with at least 3 sports psychologists for individual teams in the Nacra 17 class. And I'm sure that doesn't mean like the Nacra 17 drives you nuts. but it's a really nice little trend that we may be seeing. I know a lot of national teams have sports psychologists online, on call. But these are teams that are speaking with their sports psychologist every day for the same amount of time that they're speaking with their coaches.
Well, I think it brings in, we were talking earlier just to this whole new dynamic in the sport of male-female, mixed crews, and you got to treat it, it's a different project. Right. And so the use of sports psychs and, a different style maybe of coaching to making sure that you're getting the most out of the combinations and how you build that combination. It's different to different genders are different, and it'll be interesting in time to see how the sport evolves around that. No, it looks a positive thing for our sport. It's great.
Yes, and I talked to Perrin and Atwood of the American team, and they were saying, they have a sports psychologist that's a little spread thin. It's almost like they'd like to test drive a couple sports psychologists to find the one that works, and it really makes sense. It's the same thing as coaching.
So we're coming down to the business end of this upwind. These guys are in the top half right now, and it does look like Outridge and Outridge Australia 46 have managed to consolidate their lead there. There was a little bit of pressure by boats a few ladder rungs further to the right, but they managed to just get across Newberry and Lieberg, and also Langer and Carranza, Argentina number 1. So it is still super close out there, but as it stands, Outridge and Outridge still just have that advantage.
Yeah, they do. And
7 metres in it, though.
I think Langer and Carranza have got good upward speed. Whether they're as fast as the likes of I think Tita and Newberry downwind. I'm not sure if Santiago Langer's got his downwind completely dialed in. Upwind, they certainly look quick. Nathan Outridge has got, coming from a skiff background, he's going to be fast on the downwind legs, and it seems to be that the Australians' crews are all pretty quick on the downwind legs.
Yeah, our Aussie crews, they're not enormous, they're not huge girls, but they're super strong. I know how hard both Hayley and Lisa work in the gym to keep it up, because you can be small but powerful on these boats. So much of it comes down to timing, and these girls are really, going to show that. And it was the same with, we spoke to Tanya Frank earlier in the day in the boat park, and she and Thomas won the bronze medal, and she's not an enormous girl, I think she was one of the smaller crews in contention, and it does go to show that if you've got your timing down and your skipper's kind to you, that you can be any shape and size and sail it competitively in these classes.
This is starting to play out like a replay of the first upwind where Langer came across on a starboard, short of ley line. And we were talking about can he do 2 tacks and get round the leading boat. Same picture here. Santiago Langer is certainly ahead of the advantage line. But then he's got the roadblock, really, of outerage to windward. Now, outerage also does have... The outerage team do also... They're not on ley line, so they have to pick the time when they attack. So the top mark approach for the first and second is going to be pretty interesting. Is that going to open up an opportunity for the third take?
And they're lifting. Whether they're pinching or they're lifting, their angle is getting better and better as they're coming into this top mark.
Yeah,
you can see Langer. He's putting the pressure on. He's
quick
really
upwind.
pinching. Yeah.
Langer's quick upwind.
They're coming closer and closer to that ley line as we speak.
Yeah, and we heard about the boats that can get up on the foils. If you get up on the foils going upwind and you do it well, you actually wind up pointing higher than the other boats.
Sure, more flow and... that means less leeway, and
it's just an investment.
Exactly,
it's about
money in the gang. Here they are. So
boats.
Langer has sailed round the bow of Nathan Outridge. So that is a big moment. I mean, you'd be psychologically pretty gutted for someone to come out from being so far to leeward, and it is the current gold medalist from Rio who has had a blinder of a third leg.
Unfortunately for Newberry and Lineberg, those guys were the meat in the sandwich there. They just got squeezed out from both angles. You can see the pressure there. You can see these boats fully lifting up. I'm pretty sure that's a little weed clearer. They're going right up on their ear to make sure any weed, if they're lucky, drops off. But we're coming into our top mark. This mark rounding's brought to you by Ford Whip. Go faster on the water, and these guys are going faster.
They're pushing to try and get up.
Yeah.
They're pushing to, they're in high mode, looking to get up round the marker. But what a leg for Santiago Langer. And as he's starting to flex his incredibly strong, muscular performance in this leg. First, it'll be Argentina, followed by Australia at Mark 3.
It looks like Santiago put a little bit in the bank, holding Nathan and Hayley up, just to give himself a little bit more room. When you do that, then you get the person just a little bit further behind you. It gives you a little bit more breathing room once you get around the mark.
Little battle of the crews here, who can get that kite up and away as cleanly as possible.
Dive set.
Yeah.
Below a manoeuvre, Nathan Outridge does bear away set.
Again, right up onto the foils really quickly, but he's following him.
I think Outridge will be, if he can get sorted, has the potential to be faster on the downwind leg.
He's put himself into a good position there.
Whoa, he's lost control. He ventilated there on the foils. So what happens to the foils is it's like a speedboat. The propeller, if you get air in there, the thing won't fly correctly. And so that was a little error there by Nathan Outridge.
Yeah, you jinxed him a little bit.
Yeah, often happens.
Okay, we got the French after the Americans. Now they're starting to come back into their form. The French are really quick.
That's Delapierre and Ordonez there, France 56. Closely followed by New Zealand 96, Wilkinson and Dawson.
Wow,
they're having a great day.
They're having a huge day. A, in the regatta, but B, for selection.
Absolutely.
New crew, new combination for New Zealand.
In the fleet, the French are considered to be the most consistent in speed across the board. Even the other sailors will tell you that.
And a tight mark rounding here. You've got Sentholt and Lubeck in just with the advantage there over McKay and Saunders applying a little bit of pressure. And Gimson and Burnett are in there as well. It is packed at this end of the fleet. These guys are really fighting for every position. And we've said that time and time again. 34-boat fleet, you're just fighting to keep as tidy result as you can when it goes a little bit wrong. Great shot of this on board with Weiss hoisting that spinnaker. She'll get straight onto the sheet once she's sure it's up. It's really important that they get all the halyard tension. It can be a cranky old downwind if you don't get that halyard all the way up. You can see that attention to detail there with that last pull. Make sure it's up and then straight onto the sheet.
And getting into that harness hook, the harness hook, when you pull it down, is almost below the rail of the weather hull. So there's a big leap of faith when these crews jump into these hooks. They just fall right back out and push out really quick.
So we're looking at the group there of the New Zealanders of Wilkinson and Erica Dawson, Harlhoft and Stulphammer, and then Mackay and Saunders, 7th.
Yeah, and how that played out at the top mark. You know, Santiago Langa, you can see that lead that he's managed to pull there from outerage and outerage there as they lead down to that bottom mark. They've got a great angle, these guys, at the moment. It is a really long jibe here. It will only be one short little jibe, so you can see why there was that urgency for these guys to get straight onto that new jibe, because it will only be a short little dig back into the finish. It's a really skewed course right now.
It is long, and that's reflected in what the wind is doing. It's going right, and its pressure's in the right, hence why on the downwind, predominantly a jibe set. Can't help but think that Outeridge just missed a little trick at that top mark with slightly delayed jibe set, and then he ventilated. And I think he's got good pace, Outeridge, on the downwind leg, but Santiago Langa and Carranza have maintained their lead, but it's Outeridge has jibed out of there early. Now that creates the opportunity. Well, it creates a situation where Langer actually has to wait to get clear air before he can come across to the finish. So Outeridge is going to fight all the way to the finish here.
Applying a bit of pressure there.
Well, early jibe. He created a situation where the leading boat actually has to make a decision. He's been quite aggressive.
If there's any more breeze ahead for Outeridge, then that's a perfect opportunity. Just a little bit more pressure inserts a lot more boat speed in when you're up on the foils like this. So there's a chance that just a little bit more pressure can get you down a couple more boat lengths down to Langa's line.
Yep.
And just like Langa came up to them on the weather leg, they have a chance to roll them and drive down over the top.
Just a quick check-in. We saw Tita and Banty having a bit of trouble at that bottom mark. It has been quite tough for them. They're in 13th place now, a little bit further back in the track. So it'll be interesting to check in to see with those guys what went wrong. We'll have to chase them down in the boat park, Chris.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we want to look on the port side of that boat, and whatever they were looking down at, it looked like towards the centerboard trunk.
These guys look like they're jibing in. They'll be really close to the finish line right now. There it is. Great race by Santiago Langa and Carranza. Those guys did a stellar job and just held their nerve downwind. You know, it's getting windier. There's a bit more pressure, but you can see the Aussies there really close. Outeridge and Outeridge, a great result for them in second place. Congratulations to those guys. What a start from those. It was so impressive. And then in third place, Newbury and Limeberg. Those guys had a wonderful race as well. Just being consistent and not making any errors. And it will be Delapierre and Ordonez, France 56 in fourth place. A bit of a battle of the Kiwis going on here. McKay and Saunders have caught right up to Wilkinson and Dawson. We're going to see them coming into your screen here. It should be a nice little close Kiwi finish for these two boats. But it does look like it will be Wilkinson and Dawson just getting that fifth place in. Another good notch against the rest of their Kiwi counterparts.
Yeah, they've had a strong, very strong World Championship, and they're quite a long way ahead of the next boat, which will be Olivia Mackay and Jason Saunders. Big gap. So that leading group really extended.
Yeah.
So here's the next boat coming in. It's New Zealand, and then followed by John Gimson and Anna Barnett from GBR. they haven't had a great day.
No.
In terms of they went into today leading, I don't think they will be now.
No, and we're seeing there it will be St Holt and Lubeck in 8th place, and another New Zealand team, Jones and Porebski, in 9th place there. Although that looks like an Australian. That would be Waterhouse and Darmanin crossing the line now, and Kohlhoff and Stuhlhemmer, the German 77 team there. And we're about to see on the screen, it will be Tita and Banty. Oh, no, perhaps not. That will be one of the New Zealand teams.
Yeah, I think
there.
that might be...
Here they are, Tita and Banty getting in across the finish. They had a really tough second upwind.
I think something went wrong. You know, to go from first to deep, I think you might find in the wash-up of this one that they had an issue, whether it was weed or mechanical, something with the foils. Another good result for the Japanese there.
They'll be thrilled with their day. Fun fact, we just heard from Olivia Price out in the water. She tried to get us an interview with Outeridge and Outeridge, but apparently a Nacra going home is faster than our camera boat at the moment. So they've absolutely sent it in. It's been a long day for these guys with those delays. So unfortunately, we won't get to hear from them, but hopefully we can catch them in the boat park as we watch the rest of these guys come across the line. Peter, we're going to see a real shake-up of these results today. You know, we've seen Outeridge and Outeridge. They've put together a really solid day. You know, they haven't won every race, but they've managed to keep their lesser results solid. But we've seen a real shake-up, especially with the Spanish team, Tara Pacello and Florian Trittel. Those guys have had a little bit of a struggle today. We just saw them cross the finish line. And, you know, Vittorio Bissaro and Mael Franscari. It'll be interesting to see how all these results shake up. We should be able to get, once the rest of the fleet crosses the finish line, a bit of an update to see.
I think there'll be a new leader for a start, and I think it will be the Outeridge combination. I think Micah Wilkinson and Erica Dawson have had a good keeper day. I'd expect them to... They started in 7th. I think they're going to be in the 4th or 5th. And some people have slipped the other way. And this class really is still in the early phases of people dominate. There's no one really dominating and sort of saying, I own this class, like you see maybe in the 49ers with Burling and Took. It comes down to a new class, new combinations. The boats are still evolving.
So we'll take a little moment here to talk about our Australian bushfire appeal. This is a great way for us, the sailors and the event, to give back to those who have been devastated by the Australian bushfires over the past few months. We have a fundraiser and a raffle available. If you go to 49er.org/donate or any of our 49er FX or Nacra Facebook pages, you can please do donate, and also you go into the running to win some pretty cool prizes, which we just drew before. So we've had today's winners, but we will be drawing again tomorrow and for our final day as well. So give to a good cause and we might give back to you as we're watching the rest of the teams come across the finish line here.
So this will be the last race for the Nacra 17s, but stay with us because we've got 3 or 4 races coming up for the 14th.
And we are coming back to you live with a little bit of bad news, actually, unfortunately. We've just seen the AP over A flags go up, and so that means that, unfortunately, we won't see any racing today. So all of that chatter that we had, we'll have to just wait and see how it unfolds tomorrow. So you can tune in. We're starting a little bit earlier tomorrow to try to fit in a little bit more of our final racing. So tune in at 9:50 UTC plus 11 times or local time here at 9:50 a.m. Where we'll continue on with our schedule of planned racing and hopefully get in as much racing as possible. Fingers crossed. And the forecast looks good tomorrow.
Yeah, I was just about to say, the forecast does look great for tomorrow. So there will be enough racing for everyone to get on the water. And then, fingers crossed we have enough time to get all those medal races in and everyone gets to watch a bit of the action out on Geelong Bay.
So in the meantime, make sure you do subscribe to the 49er FX and Nacra pages. You can go to 49er.org/subscribe, and that means you get nice little updates, emails when we are going live for all of the racing, because it is Olympic year and things are heating up, and we really want you guys to support these sailors as they make their final dig towards the 2020 Olympics, which is coming up. So make sure you tune in tomorrow, and we'll be back with you live to cover all of the exciting racing tomorrow. Thanks for joining us.